Hello, everyone. It's Larry Johnson, founder of the Eight Principles, and with another podcast. And I think you're going to really enjoy this time. I'm going to have a wonderful conversation with Sean McNabb. Now, Sean and I have talked a little bit about what he does and how he does it. But, this man's not defined by that. He's defined by the passions he shares for other men and women and how he wants to positively impact their lives. So I'm not going to get too far down the road and sort of prescribe him. He tells me about what he's done, what he's going to do, and you're going to hear about that. But for right now, let's just start with kind of an open slate and let's just let you know that he lives in Arizona, that he's a cowboy, if you haven't guessed it already, by his hat, and that he has a love for other men and women that he wants to help them when they're really hurting. And we'll just let it go at that. All right. So, welcome, Sean.
Hey, Larry, thanks. Appreciate it.
So this is wide open, my friend. Um,
Okay.
I just teed it up and have a conversation back and forth. What do you want to say?
Yeah. Well, I like that you open it up like that. I was kind of explaining that having too much of that title and all those things seems to distract a little bit from what I'm learning and growing into. And really it's to your point, it's about helping these people we ran into or that we run into and getting to share a little taste of what I've got to experience through some of these living legends in the cowboy world and the ranches that we've had an opportunity to be around, and most importantly, these wild horses, the Mustangs and the troubled horses and the horses that were around that are really, I think, teaching us more than we're teaching them, and everything around that. We're building a community around that way of life and want to just share it. And I feel like I just I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world to be able to be around this stuff and see people's lives changed. So we're just trying to get that message out and share it with people. So
What do you think? I mean, from what I've heard and read, you're pretty unique in the way you do your work. And so, what makes you unique? I mean, there are lots of equine therapy or PSD, or there's lots of that out there. So what's unique? And you are unique about what you do.
yeah, so let's see. I'll probably just tell a little bit of a story to explain that because you hear equine therapy. Surprising, I didn't realize a lot of people didn't know what that was. I've seen a bunch of different types of it, everything from just walking up and being there with the horse or petting it or working there with a group of people to move a horse around or all that. But this is definitely different. In 2019, I go to church local to me right here, and a guy named Charlie Hill, kind of a local cowboy, does a bunch of training. Went to a couple of his clinics, and I saw um, some of the things he did. A friend of mine invited me to one of the clinics, and he was trying to get his horse to just lope and trot in a circle, and it wouldn't do it at all. Charlie calls the guy over and swaps out, gets on his horse, drops the reins, and proceeds to have this horse walk, trot, lope in a circle, and then stop exactly when he wanted. And I could not tell how he was doing it. And I was coming from a business world where I was kind of the guy to go and observe, minute little details to document process and all this stuff. So this guy just blew my mind. And then, so I met him in a parking lot after church and said, I have to be around this more. And he invited me to this program that Rob Boyle was putting on where we get these wild Mustangs or high anxiety horses, get them in a round pen and train and work with them like they learned to work over the course of their entire life with these horses. And then we observe a lot of it's empathy based. People can pay more attention to or like to pay more attention to a horse half the time than they do people. Definitely would prefer to be outside hanging out with horses as opposed to sitting and doing talk therapy in an office most of the time. So um, we got to watch as they explained how horses communicate and how much of it is just body language, how much of it is um, they're prey animals, so they're fear based in a lot of ways. So the way that they depict and show how they interact is really openly obvious. So we watched this horse that was just freaking out, sweating like crazy, running in circles. Even though we were all standing there, everybody could feel the anxiety level that was in this round pen. And even though people were talking, we were kind of half listening and focused on what was going on with this horse. And then over the course of about 45 minutes, I watched as these guys stepped in and showed kindness and consistency and communication and leadership at a level that I had never seen displayed, and walked this horse up to its fear, gave it an opportunity to face it, and somehow this you could visually see this horse work and walk through its fear and just let it go. And I looked around, and you had everything from moms with their kids there to special forces veterans guys to business people and CEOs, and every single person in that little crowd was bawling. And then all of a sudden we all started pointing to what the horse just did, and then telling our own story and opening up. And I got to know those people in that little group better than some of the people I'd worked with for 10 years in that 45 minutes. And after about 4 years of doing, all kinds of therapy work to get my physical and mental self back, I realized I'd never seen anything that worked better than what I just saw right there. And in that moment, I knew I got to be around this for the rest of my life. And this was kind of off the beaten path at a ranch and nobody knew about and didn't know about some of these cowboys that had been doing this their whole life. And I'm like, man, we got to show other people this, and other people need to have the opportunity to experience it. That was,
So,
that's what we've been doing.
do you have a Wrangler background, or you have military, or both?
No, not really either. I grew up around horses a little bit, had friends that and we rode and stuff, and then I was away from it for a while, kind of moved back to this area in Phoenix. I grew up in a small town, northern Arizona, but back here in Phoenix, got a place that had stalls and wound up getting back into horses and kind of finding that to be my release. As being in a city was not anything I could get used to. So being around the horses and having that property right there was a game changer for me. So, and then I found that the community I was missing, it's amazing the values and the roots and the system, that are established into the horse community. It seems like everywhere I go, and what's built into it. So as we got into it, my daughter started barrel racing, my wife did too. It was like I kind of got a lot of my life back in terms of that community and the people who will surround around you, and good godly values and love our country and all that kind of stuff all mixed together. It was like, man, I miss this. So so yeah, I was in business though. I was, did a bunch of sports and went to school to just be a good leader. I figured if I did some business management thing someday, I'd learn enough about business to be a good leader in it. Got out and wound up getting into corporate world with cubicles and traffic and driving in and a lot of rules and regulations and policies and procedures. And it felt like I lost all my wild, and I think that's what crushed me. So my whole body shut down, got all kinds of autoimmune stuff firing off, and the last 13 years has been the journey back to authentic life, most of it through horses and people. So
Um,
yeah.
I've well, my wife and I had horses for about 8 years. We well, I guess a couple of years ago, we gifted them back to a charity. We gifted them to a charity. And she's the horsewoman, having grown up in Oklahoma, and I was the Billy Crystal, having grown up in a small city. But
Yeah.
I really enjoyed them, Sean. And a couple of things you said really resonated with me because it's things I learned after being around horses. First of all, that they are animals of prey. They only know flight. That's their only defense. Um, and then they are very hypersensitive to what you're feeling. And
Mhm.
someone said to me, and I wonder if this is true, that horses can actually smell adrenaline. Is that
Hmm.
true? Someone who was reasonably authoritative said they can smell adrenaline, which is they can smell fear. Um,
Yeah. I'm sure, and I don't know all I mean, there's an immense amount of science behind it. There's a magnetic field out to like 10, 15 feet with their heart, so they can tell a, heartbeat or sync up our heartbeat. Um, yeah, but we put off stuff like dogs notice that too. When somebody's having a stroke or something like that, or you have the adrenaline kicking, they sense it. So I would imagine it's probably a combo of all of those things that they just have honed, um, like nothing else I've ever seen.
I,
So yeah, I would agree with you.
I have a friend who's, well, he's quite a bit younger than me. He's retired. Well, he's out of the military now, but he was, special forces when he was there. Good guy, smiles a lot. Doesn't have the usual kind of thing. But he'd
Yeah.
never been on a horse much. And when he came here, I took him out on our horses up into the Owahis, which are the desert mountains south of
Mm.
Boise, and I I put him up on my wife's horse. It's beautiful Palomino, and he's all smiles and I'm saying, so how you doing? I'm kind of nervous, he said, but he's had a big smile. Well, to look at him, he didn't look like he was nervous, but the horse knew it, and
Oh yeah.
this horse was like, okay, all right, this is going to be over in 10 seconds. Like I'm done with this. So
Yep.
we start out, he's not more than 20 feet out of the parking lot for with the trail. And the horse says, okay, I'm done. Boom. And bucks him off. Fortunately,
Woo!
fortunately, soft dirt. Okay. He didn't
Yep.
hit anything hard. But hey, he got up and he said, okay, I know how this works now. I'm going to get, and I'm in charge. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So, okay. Then the horse said, okay, fine. He's in charge, but we'll go. And, but I thought that was so funny. The horse knew exactly. I was like,
Oh
okay.
yeah. No, they pick up on so much. And that, to your point, one of the things you get in the round pen, and one of the other leaders we'll talk about, I'm sure, said you're either leading or they're leading.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're on that horse and you're you're on 1,000 pound animal's back in the middle, doing whatever you're doing, and they want to be the leader and be in control, they'll let you know really quick. And then one of them says, then pretty good chances of having an involuntary dismount, as Tom Brady would say
Involuntary.
it.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So,
Um,
yep,
all
that's a
right.
good one. No, they really do everything from how tense you are. I mean, they can feel a fly land on their
Mhm.
hide, so if you're sitting weird in the saddle and all tense and all that versus, relaxed, they notice, they can tell every bit of it. And they know, the thing we tell people too is they paid attention to him walking up to that horse, how he carried himself. Before he even got on, that horse was reading him. That's just what they do. So it's so ingrained into their nature. So yeah, not surprised. I've hit the dirt a few times myself. So
Well, that was the motivation, I think, for us to finally get to gift them was that Connie said to me, we're getting older and I don't want to come off this horse. And, you never know what you can break when you come off.
yeah.
Um, I was, well, I did I came off, but it was kind of weird because I was sitting on the horse. We were walking and the horse was going down this light little uh, decline and then just stops. And I wasn't ready for him to stop. And so I just kind of went
Yeah.
right on over. And then the horse came over like, well, I didn't mean to buck you off. He came over with
Yeah.
very compassionate with me. Are you okay?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
um, but yeah, and what they perceive as a threat is so bizarre sometimes. A reflection here or a noise there, just all that. I just find that fascinating.
Yeah. What kind of introduced me into it was, and they explained it really well, just in the herd mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool how there's a structure to it, how they communicate, how things, their ears and the little movements, what they mean, and how each other they kind of pick up on those little cues, and they can be a football field away and see the body position of another horse and the way it's looking, the way its ears are set, and they know there's danger, there's something. So inside of that herd, It's important. It's very interesting to note. Usually there's a lead mare. The mare is the one that leads the herd, takes them to where they go to feed or water or bed down or do whatever. I've learned that and seen a lot of it out in the wild with elk too. Similar structure. And then the stallion is the protector, kind of is around the perimeter. If anything comes that cause, is presenting danger or whatever, they'll be the ones to confront that. And then there's a hierarchy throughout the entire herd where they kind of know their place. Um, and yeah, but the flicker of an ear or the way they're standing or if their heads are up, all of those things are indicators that they really watch for. And I think they watch us for a lot of ours too, how stiff we are when we walk, where our hand position is, all those things you learn later on in the communication and the way that you present yourself. But a lot of it, you don't think about, here's how I'm going to do it. You be real and be honest with yourself. And I've seen kids that know nothing about horses walk in and ask a horse to do something. That horse will put its head down and do it. And like nothing you've ever seen. It's just amazing how if you just present yourself authentically and be honest, they know and they'll accommodate for a lot of it. But if you're off on that and you're showing up like, oh, I got power and control in this situation and all of it, it's you'll find out real quick what does and doesn't work. So yeah.
You hit on a word I want to talk about, and that is the authenticity of it, to being able to do that. So you're involved in this group called Broken Arrow, and
Yeah.
you're building this several different locations, and you're doing a combination of things. It's working with horses, but it's also working with wounded people, one kind or the other. Um, and where do you want to go with this thing, Sean?
Yeah, that's a good call. So from that first session we had, we realized, man, I just from the business background, I thought, let's figure out a way to show more people this, to expose this opportunity for other people to be around horses and support the horses and these ranches that needed a lot of volunteer help. So there was a lot of needs that were presented early, but most of it was first, hey, just invite more people, have more people come. And so I got to observe not only my healing, but I'll give one example of a buddy of mine, Mike, that came in and he's a veteran, had experienced a significant amount of trauma, and overseas. And um, in talking and getting into our stories, it's amazing how that inner life, that inner prison, the inner battle, it was so common between what he went through, even though I wasn't physically there going through a war. There was so many commonalities of that inner war that many of us go through in order to kind of find that authentic self. But as people would go through, we recognized, man, we bonded, we grew together as a group. We were able to be vulnerable. There was an environment of safety that was created. So a lot of the healing aspects of things, and especially in the mental health world, is that you have that safe place that you're able to describe what you're going through or talk about that inner life and kind of take off that mask, which the world today seems to be more and more not that environment. And so if we're not seeing that, then we get to create that environment and open those doors for people to come in. And half the time, even if you're struggling, if you know you're around other people that are supportive of you, the suicide rate drops like crazy when you're as soon as you're in an environment like that because you can share and open up and be honest. But we noticed that as we go through these programs or things that we had structured, people would get out and then without having the events or the things to stay connected with or give back, that they would kind of regress and just go back to being on disability or back to their sitting on the couch and potentially even suicidal again within a couple months. And we learned it over the summer when it gets to be 120 degrees here and you're not outside with horses. We kind of had to ramp stuff down with the horse part. And we recognized people were kind of regressing. So the biggest note for me was that if we don't have the community to land in after this, that we've built a community around it, then the programs on their own don't do anything because you just go back and forth. So that became the reason for Broken Arrow Wranglers was to be kind of a platform and a place with a directory that would host both online and overall, where people that have these events and these activities could put them out there and say, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on to maintain in this community. And then we realized, well, there's a salt river right here. Let's do kayak trips. Let's go out and camp together. Let's do all these other parts. And we realized there was tons of ways to do life together. I mean, even local sports programs. There was a Paladin sports outreach. It was like, if you maintain that same community where the families get together and support the kids in that environment to bring them up right, you do that through sports too. So we really wanted to bring that brand, Broken Arrow Wranglers, to the community and kind of say, here's what we stand for, and how can we all bond together to change local culture, um, one person at a time. So the horses seem to be the gateway. They get people to open up. We have a lot of activities and things that help you kind of see yourself and make a decision of whether you want to go down that authentic path for your life or not. Not everybody's ready for that.
No,
Um,
not.
but yeah, that the idea is to bring that together. We created the nonprofit tied to it with a fiscal sponsor so we could raise funds and cover the cost for people who couldn't afford to go to it. But and then the last piece, one of the big ranches that we worked out of, Tyler Farms, had like 150 horses that they were boarding there, and it was on 50 acres, right backed up to this really cool spot in the valley. And they wound up having to sell it. And as that broke apart, and we looked, well, we need to get another ranch. We need to build another ranch. On my drive from my place to Scott Tyler's place, I saw five pretty good sized ranches with all the facilities, round pens, covered arenas, and all these things, and a bunch of horses sitting there that weren't getting used. And we were going to have to wait 6, 8 months to try and build something or get it set back up. And I go, why don't we just go talk to these guys where they're using it for certain times of the day, but during the day or certain time periods, those are vacant resources that we could be using. And we tell this story and tell them what we're doing. We have not had one place that we've asked that hasn't said, absolutely, use my property, use my place, use my horses. And oh, by the way, my son's a videographer. Can he come help? And we realized that story, that everybody wants to be part of something like this, and that if we just brought it all together under that story to help people, it's kind of like the Ephesians 4 community. It's like we're all one. We just needed something to bring us all together. So my
That's
job in that is just really to kind of help grease those wheels and share that story, and then give people the that's why we call it Wranglers. It's like you become a Wrangler, and then you're part of the community. You're part of the hands that are making this happen. So
so.
it's probably a little more than.
No, no, it is. You've mentioned a couple of times in passing how important is the faith element of what you do. I mean, how central is the gospel to the work you do?
That's a good question. So for me, in the transformation I was going through in my life, it was I came to understand at a really deep level that we are living here in this world, but we're sent. We're from somewhere else. Kingdom mindset. And we even talked about calling it Kingdom Ranch and a bunch of those things. So for me personally, it's everything. To me, it's Jesus is and was one of the greatest outlaws to the rules and the systems of this world. So that really appealed to me, and it was more of seeing kind of the mud and the blood on the face Jesus that really drew me into this in a time where I needed a warrior in order to make it out of what I was in. So I think he's the one that drew me in and put every single person in the path along the way. But what we found as we were going into this, more than half of the people that were showing up, when we say Jesus' name or we talk about any of the stuff, you could kind of see people kind of pull back or cringe or all these. And we realized that there is a ton of abuse in that area, a ton of where people are trying to get away from just the rules of religion and all that kind of stuff, and they weren't really being brought to it in the sense that it's a relationship and it is freedom. It's, so we went, man, if we come out with that up front, and just rattle all that stuff off, it was turning a lot of people away just because they came to see these horses and this wild stuff, and maybe we weren't presenting it right. I don't know, but what we found is that that kind of comes over time,
Yeah,
just from the observation. So
I think you're well. First of all, you're right. You're not overemphasizing it, and if we look to the example of the living Jesus on earth, he approached it the same way. He did not approach it first with the rules of the temple or the synagogue.
right,
He approached it on the basis of, you're a man who has pain, who is suffering. How can I help you? And he's focused on you. He's not focused on anybody else, and he doesn't whip out the rule book, or at that time the scrolls, whatever you would call them.
yep,
And I like to say that, and it's true, that his number one critics were the religious establishment, and in that regard, that would today probably would be the evangelicals, the sort of like, well, that was his number one critic base, and
yep,
mainly because he didn't follow all the prescribed rules,
yep,
whatever they might be, and
yep,
he didn't observe all the conventions either. Those were man-made things to him, and he went right to the source. I think I may have mentioned this to you, but I heard a sermon once, and the minister used this example. He said, and there's Jesus sitting over there at the table full of sinners, having a wonderful time. All right,
yeah.
he
I
loved
love that.
he loved people.
Yep,
And I said, his chief critics were, he hangs around the wrong kind of people, and he goes to way too many parties. And
yep,
he's the life of the party when he's there, you see.
yep,
And that I try to tell people that a lot. I have a friend also. You'll find this interesting. He's an adult now. He's younger than me, an adult. He's Roman Catholic, and he was raised Catholic. And his father abandoned his mother and brother when they were like, what, he was like 10, 12, 13. And for a while, they were relatively homeless. They lived in a pop-up tent in a campground. And at one point, he got a scholarship to a Jesuit school. And I don't know if you know anything about the Jesuits, but they are serious Catholics. Okay, we are serious.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he was at summer camp. It was boys' school. It's his summer camp on point. And this was when he was like 13. He's going through all the training, the catechism, and all that sort of thing. And he was really conflicted. He told me the story as an adult. He's a physician now, but he told me the stories. I just really conflicted. So he said, I went to one of the fathers, and I said, Father, I am just really, I'm just so conflicted, and I'm trying hard to do these things, and I can't remember all this, and blah 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 blah
yeah.
blah. And from the mouth of a Jesuit, he said, Jamie, have you given your heart to Jesus? And Jamie
Mm.
said, yes. And the Jesuit father said, that's all you really need to know. He said, the other's nice, and you might learn that, but that's all you really need to know. That's out of the mouth of a Jesuit.
Hey, oh man, that is it. Because the rest of it, I mean, we're gonna struggle through that stuff. We're in a pretty beat up and broken world, and if we're out there in it, I mean, it's not easy. We're all going through something, and if we just remember that part right there,
Mhm.
that's everything, man.
I just find
It's
that that's always struck with me, Sean, because I don't know what you know about the Jesuits, but they're called God's Army. That's their name, and
ah,
they're the very serious front guard of orthodoxy.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
you don't. By the way, they're also very good fundraisers. Just FYI, they're,
yeah,
they're
yeah.
the best fundraisers in the Catholic Church. But yeah,
Yeah,
you don't mess with those
that
guys.
explains it.
You-
Yeah. It's funny you say that because and you had mentioned when we talked before too, it's like Jesus was he's a fisherman. He hung out with the fishermen of the time who were some pretty, they're out there having to do quite a bit of physical activity, and they're probably the roughest of the bunch. And I think you had mentioned it's like they're not going to follow a pansy, and that picture, that image um, of the man that you can follow like that, but then still has the kindness, the consistency, all the different parts that he displayed, all the stories you hear. It's like, and I love this part too. He comes back on a horse, right? There's meaning in that to me, a ton of it. And when he does, he's the one with the blood on his robe and fire for eyes and just a sword coming out of his mouth. So that looks like the warrior, you know. So as I look at that and I look at where we're at in life, and we talk, people say, well, where's your ranch? And we say, well, it's in here first. And if we recognize that piece, I think we got held up on building this out for quite a while so that we would recognize that we're not trying to build something outside first. It's we build this part here first. And we've really focused on that and help people recognize that. I think it's John 10:9, and I'm not good at memorizing the things, but he says, uh, nobody comes to the Father but by me. And he talks about there's pasture and you'll come in and go out. And anybody who tries to not come through the gate is a thief who's trying to come and steal and destroy. That looks like a ranch to me. He's talking about pasture. He's talking about a gate. And we go in and out of that and find good pasture. And it's like, that's been kind of a guide for um, our brand, but at the same point, when you're going out, we're just showing up real. And what we found is that more often than not, when we share the darkness, the shadows, the deep hurts and the pain, more people were willing to open up and share their life when we did that. Because it's like, man, how are these people sharing such crazy stuff that they've been through and saying we still struggle with a lot of it, not acting like we got everything together. It's just a much more inviting environment. It opens people up. And a lot of times the people that run from that are the ones that say, okay, now I know I can open up on this and I may not be ready for it yet. And they'll come back in a week or two and then just pour their life out. But that's what we call broken arrow wranglers. Cause it's like, man, if we just recognize there's nobody that's, if there's a line in terms of whether you've made it or not, and you're being judged on how good you're doing, we're all, whether we did good enough or not, we're all below that line
Yes.
without him. So that was, we kind of live in that place. And, but we don't have to say much. That's what the beauty of it is if we get in, I like to tell the story, you can get a corporate team in and a CEO that really runs a good show, but may have some ego with them. And you get him in a round pen with a horse, and that horse will let you know who he is in 5 seconds, and the whole team knows it too. You can't hide it,
No.
you know. And so that transparency around these horses, it's evident. So you got, that's what I like the most about it is it just, we call it the great leveler. You know, when we're around horses, we're all, you know, they bring us to that place
Mhm.
better than we could do it on our own. So even within our team, when we get kind of caught up and messed up, we in terms of the business of it or what we're trying to do, we all just say we just always come back to the horse. And we may, whether it's getting a round pen or going a ride or whatever, and it brings you back to that central place. That's why I
Well,
like
something I
it so
wanted to
much.
stress that you mentioned is building an organization does not start with creating facilities. It starts from creating the vision inside. And I want to emphasize that because a lot of people who embark upon doing something that's humanitarian, it's a ministry or a mission or a nonprofit, whatever you want to say, however you want to call it, they're focused on the externals. And
Yeah,
not that those are irrelevant, of course, but that's not where you begin. All right.
yeah,
And it also touches on two of the two principles of what we do at the eight principles is first of all, principle two is begin at the beginning. Funny how that works. And what you're focused on there is understanding fundamentally who you are and then how that is presented to a world in a way that they will receive it. See, that's the second part. That's the second half. Okay. People usually get the first half to some degree, but it's the second half that they really start scratching their head over. So there's that one, excuse me. And the other one is that when you're looking to build an organization, you just, you just don't go out and ask anyone and everyone. You begin closest to you, and then you work out in concentric circles. That's also a very, very accurate on fundraising. Every 2 weeks, we do, and I want you to come to the next one if we can. We do a little a briefing on how you acquire new people, and you can do it without buying software or anything else. And it's really a sophisticated version of word of mouth is what it is. And you don't have to
Yeah.
buy any software. And here's the way you do this. And that's usually the most effective. Well, it is. I can show you the numbers actually. The highest conversion, the highest acquisition. I got the numbers. I'll show them to you. But technology is a dazzler, Sean. Everyone wants to be the magic wand kind of thing. It isn't the way it works. So
No.
we talk. I want to go back again. So what are your goals for 2025? What do you want to achieve in 2025?
Yeah. So if I could, right before I jump into that, Larry, I just on those some of those principles and the things when we talked before, I just wanted to share. Um, like I said, I was in the business world before and really focused on a lot of who's the customer and what's their need, and then designing everything to it, including writing multi-million dollar IT programs and technology to automate and do all that stuff. So I mean, I spent a lot of time in that world, got into this, and we focused on, okay, man, these people that are hurting, the veterans, the moms, the dads, the corporate people who were having strokes, that it was all around. The need is huge there, and so we built programs and all these things to really meet that need, and designed an entire thing around it to meet those customers' needs. And then we found um, that we were failing like crazy, especially on the fundraising component of it, because we would go and tell that story about here's how we're meeting these customer needs. And last week when we talked, you through a couple different ways pointed out that hey, that's not your customer, those are your beneficiaries. And I felt something click in my head, and I almost felt like I got dizzy when you said it because I knew in an instant all of the things we'd been failing at, including going to these networking events and trying to do this social media campaigns and using all this software and doing all this stuff. If it's all pointed in a direction that we thought, oh, here's who we're serving. But that big shift in the business world is like, well, you're serving people who are going to be the ones paying for it, most cases in the business world. And in ours, we became very aware that a lot of the people that were in these tough spots are not sitting on the amount of money that was required in order for us to sustain our operation. So I went, okay, switch. And when that switch flipped, and it hasn't stopped for the last week and a half since we've talked, where I'll go out and watch my farrier who's doing the shoes on my horse, and I'm going, the horse is the beneficiary, I'm the customer. It's like it's playing out every single thing in my life. But what it's doing is helping me realize that the message that I was taking, if we're taking it to the people who want to be part of this endeavor, who want to be investors into what we're doing. Before in the business world, it was like, man, these guys are, we're gonna have to figure out some structure and some model and some interest rates or whatever, and percentages. That's not what it's about.
No.
It's the people,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that they want, like you say in here, is that they want to be part of something. But the story isn't just how we're meeting those customers or our beneficiaries' needs, is how do we go out and speak to the people that would want to be part of what we were given the opportunity to build. And now the whole message is shifting in me. The story that drew me in, I get to tell that in a completely different way than we were telling it. And we already had it. That's the beauty of it. So now we get to bring it out. And I'm going through your book, and it lays out every bit of the structure that's needed to do it. And I think I'm just saying from, the past 4 years of failing miserably. Not, I mean, we've had a lot of success, but in comparison to what I now see, it's like every failure that we had, I'm going back through and it's saying, here's how you change that. So it's a big thank you. And how we came together and got to talk, I just feel like it's been the timing of it. I couldn't have asked for something better. I was sitting, in a place of almost solitude, looking at these networking meetings and going and not handing out cards, going, I can feel everything we're doing is wrong. And I don't know what it is. And I would just sit there in the room and watch people talk and go, this isn't it. I didn't know. And then everything pivoted at that moment. And now I realize how to communicate. That we got a long ways to go. I'm going to learn a lot as I go along this process, but now I get to apply a lot of those principles that I learned in business and apply them in the right structure. I feel
It's
like Karate Kid, where he finally goes, I'm fed up with it. And then he gets to start using it. So just a lot of gratefulness. Had to say that. And I can go back to goals whenever. So,
well, yeah, it's understanding who the players are and
yeah.
what their motivations are. Um, and I mean, having an opportunity to be involved in changing another life and being significant in that way. Um, you know, I think I've mentioned this to you, but I'll say it again. I say it to everyone. If you can give your investors experiences they can't purchase, um, there will never be a money issue. No.
Yeah.
In fact, you'll probably have the embarrassment of riches. And then how do you deal with all that? That's a different issue. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's because it's so uncommon because we live in a world that has commercialized, transactionalized, commoditized just about everything except the things that really matter. All right.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, even in filling out grants, a lot of them you have to fill them out to put measures on it to take away from the things that we're actually doing. So we found tons of struggle in that. So I couldn't agree more with what
here's
you
good
just
news.
said. So
Here's good news. When it comes to grants, um, I think I may have mentioned this to you. Maybe you've gotten far enough in the book, you can see that combined all together, almost 90% of all philanthropy comes from individuals, not from
yep.
organized philanthropy, which would be independent foundations or corporate work or anything else. Because between bequests, that's dead people, and living individuals, and individual family foundations, which behave like individuals, is just simply a tax thing, or DAFs or any of those other things. It's all coming from individuals, and you structure your relationship accordingly. The good news is that money is the most renewable and the most flexible of what you can use it for. So that's the key. That's the key.
Yeah.
Well, you're just starting on
Yep.
this trip. You're going to have so much fun, Sean. You better fasten
Oh
your.
yeah. No. Yeah, I
Best.
was gonna say if you want examples of a lot of the stories of the failure of it, I got plenty of those. And
Well,
then tying them back to how we're making our way out of it, which I think it even has purpose as well. So
I
I'm
do. I
I'm
do.
starting to recognize how all the two of them tied together, even the timing of it is was so critical. So
Well,
um,
here's what I want to do. I want us to revisit this in about 4 to 6 months,
okay,
and so you're going to be on a count in about 6 months to see what's happened.
okay,
I want to follow your progress and what you're doing. Now, you had sort of your aha moment, your light on moment. Um, the reason you had that light on moment was you're what's called psychologically open. You're open
mm,
to new things. You're open
mm,
to seeing things differently. And that is a quality that is not shared much, unfortunately, in the nonprofit world because they're so
mm,
focused on what they want to accomplish and the way they want to accomplish it. They just assume that the rest will fall into place. No, it
yeah,
won't.
yeah.
So,
Now, to cover your one thing in that with goals is we're very aware of how much bigger this is than us, all the resources that are out there and available, and that if we're going to do this, that we need a lot of people to be on board and understand this story, and then we provide some structure for it. And I think to that point, if we can utilize this and maybe check in, like you said, in 6 months to see. We're building out what we call outposts, where we'll go and we'll see where there's ranches available and things that we need to do to build them out and have training to be able to bring in volunteers and people to help and how to utilize the vacant space or the vacant time on these places instead of going and spending, if not hundreds of millions of dollars buying ranches that would allow us to do it. They're there, people are willing. So to bring that together, make it happen. Um, I think we can build outposts in some pretty amazing places and have a lot of people get together to do something that people love. I mean, I don't think everybody watches Yellowstone because it brings out a little bit of an outlaw in us, and there's something about the freedom that we can have in this life
Mhm.
inside that people are missing, and
That's right.
and it there's a way to get it out, and we should all live in that place, and that's what we're doing. So
You don't
how
have to.
that's going to look is going to be a fun ride.
That's right. You don't have to be Kevin Costner to experience that. Um,
Right,
but
exactly.
it's true. It's true. And one thing that I'm gonna, it's a theme I want to bring back when we meet again. I want the audience to know you are currently operating under the aegis of another 501c3, another
Right.
profit, and so you're seeking your own letter, your own designation. So you really are at the very beginning, and I want to stress that to the audience because too often there's this doom and gloom about, well, we're small and we're this and we're that. And I like to tell people, even the very large organizations started from nothing. All right. And so this is a good case study of how you do it right. You come up with the idea, you let the idea grow from within you out. You reach out to people. Oh, this is going to be great. Sean, I can't wait. So,
Yeah, I think so. We're gonna have fun.
all right. Okay. I want to thank you for being here today, and we will check in another 6 months. Thank you.
Sounds good, Larry. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I've been working here with Sean today at McNabb, and he's going to get back with me in 6 months, and I hope to hear about progress.